Welcome. I am Claudia Noriega-Bernstein, abundance coach, author, and host of the award-winning Don't Shrink to Fit podcast, which recently won the Woman in Podcasting Award in the coaching category. Over the past 15 years, I have the privilege of connecting with women from around the world, and I am here to share all the tools I have learned along the way to help you uncover new possibilities in your life. In this space, you will hear impactful stories from women who have walked in similar shoes, sharing their wisdom and insights. Each week, I welcome a new guest, open and ready to support you on your journey. Together, through spirituality and coaching, we will explore your passions, reveal your inner gifts, and embrace possibilities you may not have thought were within reach. Let's grow beyond limits, so you never have to shrink to fit again. What if saying yes could change everything? My guest today, Lori Pappas, is living proof of the power of reinvention. From overcoming a traumatic childhood to becoming a nationally recognized entrepreneur, to moving to Africa in her 50s to create a charity that impacted over 100,000 lives. Lori's journey is nothing short of extraordinary. Now, in her 70s, she shares her wisdom in the magic of yes, a guide to embracing life opportunities and rewriting the stories that hold us back. In this episode, we dive into resilience, reinvention, and the courage to step into the unknown. You won't want to miss this one. Hi, everyone. I have Lori Pappas today, and I am very thrilled to have you here because my belief is that we are a product of our circumstances and our beliefs, and how we navigate those circumstances. And you have a very interesting life. And I think you can be an incredible billboard for so many women that have the idea that you're supposed to do A, B, and C at this age, this age, this age, and you kind of broke them all. So I want to welcome you to Don't Shrink to Fit, and can't wait to hear your story.
Well, thank you. First of all, I absolutely love the name of your podcast because that really tells it, doesn't it? Don't
Yeah,
shrink to fit. It really tells its own story that be who you're meant to be, who you want to be. It's your life. And the thing of it is that every single human being in this world has choice. We do have choice. And
yeah,
even if we're born in a pile of crap, I mean, we have the choice to climb out of it. And um, and it's marvelous. It's just absolutely marvelous. And no matter what, even the toughest life lessons, even the toughest situations can really have a flip side to them that can that can really help you survive. And I know this to be true because I was really born into a pretty crummy situation. Not horrible because I had plenty to eat, I had a roof over my head, I had parents that believed in education, and I was born in the West. And I'm a
mm,
white woman in the West, and we inherently have an advantage. So
mm,
I definitely was dealt some really good cards. The cards that were not so great was um, my mother was a religious fanatic. And by that, I mean she didn't take responsibility for what she said because she was just a mouthpiece. And whatever came out of her mouth or whatever she did was because God told her to do it,
mm,
which really is kind of like a great escape. Um, but and so how that impacted me was that because I was not a follow the leader type of child, even from the time I was first a toddler, I was always questioning everything. Um, she thought I was possessed by the devil. And
Mm.
that traumatized me without me realizing that I was traumatized. I just thought she was weird. But when you're not validated as a person, that really damages your self-worth. And it's crazy. Here I've been doing all this work and I talk on a lot of podcasts. I've written a book. And just last week, I was at a self-care retreat and it was just so moving and inspirational and so wonderful. And all of a sudden, I realized, oh my God, that inner child in me still needed more nurturing
Mm.
because there were some poignant points that came up. And all of a sudden, I felt, oh, I don't belong or I'm not worthy. And so intellectually, you know,
Yeah.
but still at that gut level, at times that bubbles forth. So I guess the thing I'd like to talk about is you have choice and we can become the curious entrepreneur of our own life. We can.
Mm-hmm.
And, just those of us that survived early trauma, in a way, we really have an advantage because we've built resilience. We're still here. We
Yeah.
survived.
Yeah.
And so, because we survived, we know how. We don't have to worry about it. We know how to do it. So bring it on. We can deal with things.
I think like in a way it's like you know what the worst scenario would be. So so it's
Yeah,
like, I mean, what's the worst that could happen? Okay, I know I can handle that. So let's just keep it
exactly.
moving. But
Exactly.
what you just said a little bit ago is so true because it as happens to me too. Um, I have learned that trauma is the inability to be present. And when you're a kid and you suffer that trauma, it kind of create a glitch, like a stop, right? And sometimes when a situation somehow reminds you how you felt in that moment, that trauma comes back. I had a lot of therapy. I worked a lot on myself, but like you, I have moments when it's like I want to look over my shoulder to see if my mom is watching me and if she's going to approve whatever I'm deciding to do in that moment. And I guess that's what makes us humans, we never going to reach that level of enlightenment where nothing affect us in any way. And for me, that is an opportunity to get curious and see not so much the result of what I'm feeling, but the source of why am I feeling it, and go deeper, trying to find out, okay, what parts of my life still need healing. So
Mhm.
that will not affect me as much or can affect me less and less when the situation of that feeling connected to a situation similar comes back again. And I don't believe in mistakes. I feel that even when we make a mistake, it's an opportunity to learn and it's an opportunity to make another choice that can bring us closer to what we wanted to achieve in the first place. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely. I am a big fan of making mistakes. I am. I think that really what you want to be is somebody that can make a lot of mistakes really fast because then they're little mistakes and then you can learn and you can make other choices. But it
Hmm.
builds that resilience muscle and it builds that opportunity for you to really develop great skill in getting up really, really quick. You fall in a hole, you get back up. You fall in a hole, you get back up. Just don't keep falling in the same hole.
I
You
say
know?
that to my kids. I go, make all the mistakes you want, just don't make the same one twice. Get a new one so you can
Yeah,
have a different lesson. Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. I totally agree, Claudia. So it's for me, maybe it's because my abuse was very it was an emotional abuse. It wasn't a physical abuse, but what it did do is it helped me develop really tough skin. So when I began my first business, it was selling computer systems into the manufacturing arena. And at that time, I mean, we're talking, my God, almost a half a century ago. It was a
So it
long
was
time ago.
a man's world.
Oh, very dominated. And so you get a lot of arrows tossed at you. They're either arrows tossed at you or they're propositions tossed at you. And because I had such a lizard skin, it was really a tough, tough skin. I could deflect those arrows and it didn't penetrate. I just, kind of said to myself, well, that's kind of stupid. Let's move on. Or you expect me to go to bed with you, just take that contract of my competitors, sign it and shove it, where.
Mm-hmm.
It
Pick a
didn't,
ticket and wait in line.
yeah, exactly. Well, no, I didn't want a line. But anyway, yeah, it's that type of thing. And you get so that you're able to really just walk on by, literally,
Mm,
that because you've got that tough skin. And the way I dealt with my trauma was I disassociated. Now, that worked well for me in difficult situations. It didn't help me be a really present mother, however.
mm,
And when my kids were little, if something I didn't know what to do, I'd try to avoid it. And that's not a healthy behavior. Wasn't until I was, well, I did my personal work when I was in my 50s, and my kids were already in their 20s and 30s.
mm.
So, um, I've been able to help be in a different position for my grandchildren.
Right.
But for my kids, I was not emotionally available.
Mm,
And because that was still that holdover from the trauma and me surviving that trauma. So if I could do something over again, I would do that, but I can't. So all I
right.
can do is be emotionally available now or work on being more and more emotionally available. Um, so, yes, you've got, you have negative things that come out of it, but just like anything, there's lessons that you can pull out and learn from. And I think what's really important, anyway, particularly it was for me, is to realize that I always did the very best I could do
Mm.
and to forgive yourself for being human and
Yeah.
to keep moving forward and learning and doing better and being available. But no, none of us are perfect. None of us are.
Yeah, it's true. But I am also curious when you're talking about how you were so driven to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a contradictory to me in my head when I think about it, because you come from a family where your mom used religious as an excuse to domesticate you, make you become whoever she wanted
Mm-hmm.
you to become. Yet you had the courage to break that mold and go after what you wanted in an environment where you knew it was going to be a lot harder because it was a man's world. So where did you get the strength? Because you could have picked anything in the world and you could have probably worked as a volunteer at the beginning, where you can have more love and nurturing and feel more acknowledging and thankful and embrace. Yet you went to the fridge. You went to an area where there was no love and kindness and nothing. It was just competition and go, go, go. Why did you choose that?
Claudia, as strange as this sounds, I don't recall making a conscious choice.
Oh,
It wasn't like I sat down and looked at what could I do or whatever. It was, if I go back to kind of the cards I was dealt when I was born. I
Mm-hmm.
was, yeah, I was born into a family that had its own pathology that was very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm smart. I'm curious. I have a lot of energy, and I'm resilient. So when kind of I have to talk just a tiny bit about the end cap of that trauma.
Mm-hmm.
I My dad ended up committing me into an insane asylum because he wanted peace in the house, and the psychiatrist had suggested that my mother be admitted into an asylum, and he would never agree to that because that would mean he married damaged goods. So I got put in, and in a very short, this was back in the, oh gosh, it was in the 60s. And at that time, these places were doing lobotomies, they were doing shock treatment. I mean, it was not a wholesome wellness center type of
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I became aware of it, and I was smart enough to realize I'm not going to go down this path. So I started thinking about what could I do to get out of there as quick as I could. And I managed to get out without any of those awful treatments. And I knew at that point that the only support system I had was me. I couldn't count on anybody else. And so at 17, when you know you can't count on anybody else, and you are curious and you have motivation, you're an internally motivated individual,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to start going down paths, whether you know where you're going or not. And I like a challenge. When I started my business, the microcomputer had just been introduced, and that opened whole new marketplaces. And I had a job. One of my first career type of jobs was I was one of the first computer saleswomen in the country, maybe in the
Wow.
world, I don't know. And it was a natural for me because I don't like detail, but I like detail being done right. And so if I want detail to be handled right, why not automate it? And it was just at the beginning of that. And so I was a pioneer in that industry. And then when the personal computer came, all of a sudden prices dropped and small businesses could afford it. And the most complicated business I knew of was manufacturing. So that's where I went. And it ended up being wonderful because number one, I was odd. When you're the odd man out, you're able to get more attention. So people were curious, what was going on with this woman? And because I was competent, I had an advantage.
Mm-hmm.
I had a big advantage over the men. And I really cared about my customers' business. I wanted to make money, I wanted to exceed, but I really wanted to make sure that they were having a better experience with my products. And they knew that. You know, people know when you're
When you
wanting,
care.
when you care and you're really trying to make their situation better.
Mm-hmm.
So I started that business when I didn't have any money. I was a single mom at that time with two little girls. And so I had to figure out a way to sell a complicated product into a market that had not been developed and not spend a lot of money. And so we were pioneers in telesales, webinars, all remote demonstrations, all of that. And once again, that allowed me to differentiate. And I've just been really lucky. Opportunities come up, and I've been at the right place at the right time and can just grab a hold of them.
But you said also that you redefine success. So that
Mm-hmm.
makes me think that at the beginning of your life, you were looking for something, and then it dawned on you that there was something else you wanted.
Oh, Claudia, about 5,000 times, and really the whole idea is you feel successful when you jump over the bar, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you set that bar too high, you always have the option to lower the bar. So, you can keep redefining success.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not able to jump like a bunny, bring the bar down a little bit. And we have that choice. So I'm really good at redefining success. You take a look at it, you think about what variables can I control? Oh, I can't control that one, but I could control this one. So let's change the objective a little bit and then give it all we've got. And then if we get new information, that means we should be going in a little bit different direction, turn the direction. There's nothing that says we have to always march forward.
That is true. I believe that life is like a dance. You do one step forward, one step back. As long as you keep on moving, you're dancing,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I totally agree. So it's I don't know, it's just been such a wonderful adventure. And here I am, 75 years old, and I'm starting my third career. And how lucky is that? That's pretty darn lucky.
Yeah. And in the process, you wrote a book, which is, I was kind of trying to learn a little more about that. My husband always says to me, the next best answer is no. And I'm like going through your stuff, and your book is The Magic of Yes.
Yes.
Tell me about that book. What inspired you to write that book?
Um, when okay, so I sold my business at 49. I tried to retire for
Mm-hmm.
about 6 years. And I did volunteer work. I gardened. I mean, when I say I gardened, I planted over 3,000 plants by myself. I mean, I
Wow.
have a tendency to overachieve a little bit. And
Were you married then, or were you were still a single
oh,
mom?
I was married to my second husband,
Okay.
and that was failing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I I decided to well, we were traveling a lot, and I met a little girl in the middle of Africa, and she had flies on her face, and she was the same age as my granddaughter. And I thought, my gosh, that could be my little Ella. And Ella did nothing special to be born my granddaughter, and this little girl did nothing wrong to be born
Right.
into a disease-ridden life.
Mm.
And so why don't I put my energy, because I was bored and I didn't like my husband and I really needed something more to do. I decided I'd figure out how to get flies off the face of all these little kids in Africa. And one thing led me to another, and I started working in Ethiopia. But as soon as that happened, I started thinking about the magic of yes for me.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that really what that was stepping beyond fear and embracing the new. And that just started resonating with me, this title, The Magic of Yes, and how wonderful it is when we see an opportunity and we just say yes and we embrace it.
Mm.
So that was in 2007 that came to me. And I went to Africa. I gave it everything I had. I had to leave in 2016, and it took me 7 years to recover because I had really emptied my well we worked with about 100,000 people and did all kinds of initiatives. And and for 7 years, kept saying, "Oh, I've got to write this book, but I don't really want to write a book. I really am not a writer. I don't want to do it." And then one day, someone challenged me, "Well, why don't you just sit down and write it?" And so I did. And I was fortunate enough to have a really good editor who structured the book for me. And I kept talking about, and I knew it was going to be the magic of yes. And he was saying that in order for the book to have credibility, I really needed to include my story. And we ended up structuring the chapters so that it follows the arc of my life, and it
Mm-hmm.
goes from winning with the cards that you were dealt, and like saying yes to saying no and setting boundaries, or saying
Mm-hmm.
yes to forgiving yourself and others, or saying yes to challenging the status quo, or taking risks and explore opportunities, and on and on. And it really ended up following the arc of my life. So the first four chapters are all about discovering your essence. And then the next four chapters is all about navigating your chaos. And I had a lot of chaos. I mean, two failed marriages, kids, divorce, being a single mom, starting a business, selling the business, all those kinds of things. And then the next one was becoming unfettered and free. And I loved that. The idea that I could be free to be me, and I could be free to explore and and really transform my life, because if it is to be, it's up to me. It really is up to me.
100%. I have that in, I can show it to you in one of my frames. If it's
Yeah.
to be, it's up to me.
All I have to do is do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And then,
what have you learned in this, like writing your book force you in a way to pause, right? And go through every stages of your life and see what you can rescue and create those lessons for other people that read your book and feel empowered and inspired by you. But what was the biggest lesson for yourself? What did you learn writing that book about yourself?
well, I think, first of all, I have to change the tense because I'm still learning. I'm still learning because as I talk about it, and now all of a sudden I'm becoming known for who I am, not what I can do.
Hmm.
My whole career was about what I could do. And now I'm talking about who I am and what one can be. But what I really learned through that was how how important it is to to share what you know in a way that resonates with others. And because all of us relate in different ways, how can we do how can we formulate a message in a way that somebody has actionable steps, that is inspiring, that's relatable, and the people are accessible?
Hey, Mama, if you're feeling exhausted, overwhelmed, or like you have lost yourself in the chaos of motherhood, I see you and you are not alone. I know how heavy it feels to be pulled in every direction, running on empty, and wondering why sometimes you just can't push through. But hear me when I say this: you are not failing, you're just caring too much, and it's okay to need support. I have worked with so many moms who felt the same way, tired, drained, and struggling with guilt for not being able to do it all. But here's the good news: you don't have to do it alone. That's why I created my coaching program, to help moms like you break free from burnout, get your energy back, and actually enjoy life again. Whether it's a one on one coaching, my transformational programs, or simple tools to help you feel more in control, I have options that fit your life. DM me balance to my Instagram or visit my website to schedule a free discovery call. All the links are in the description of this show. You don't have to keep on doing this all on your own. So let's figure it out together.
Now, I know that some people might think that I'm a little bit one off. I mean, not a lot of people escape to Africa to get rid of a failed marriage,
Right.
um, but I did. So that's why in every chapter I have stories about extraordinary, ordinary women that overcame whatever it was that's the topic of that chapter by saying yes.
Mm.
And their stories are really fun and inspiring to me. And then, even after the book had been picked up by a publisher, but I had a couple months before everything had to get turned over, I thought, okay, so if I'm the reader, number one, I don't want to be bored. I can't
Right.
stand boring books. And if this book is supposed to teach me something, what's it going to teach me? I mean, you've got to have some kind of takeaway. So
Mm-hmm.
magic happens in the morning when I walk my dog, Mooney. She's this wonderful little cattle dog, and she sniffs at everything and tries to eat anything that's laying around. And that's when all of a sudden an aha moment will come. And one morning, Mooney and I are walking down the street, and I thought, oh my God, I could use a dream sequence. It could be D for desire, R for reflect, E for explore, A for acknowledge, and M for a mantra.
I
And
love that.
I do too. I was so excited. And so, what that allowed me to do was to go back to every chapter and to double check and see, now, is that really what the message is there? And and so by the time my book came out, I was in love with it. I loved it, and I was proud of it, and I am. It's the best I could do at that point in time. Now, if I was going to write another one, I probably could do better. But at that point in time, it was the absolute best that I could do. And I'm proud of it. And I'm not usually real proud of things because I'm always thinking there could be something a little better and all that kind of crap, you
Because
know,
you're an overachiever.
because I'm an overachiever. I'm guilty. Yeah.
And also because probably like many women, and it happens to me too, it's hard for you to accept compliments.
Oh, I do have a problem with that. I mean, I can say, oh, thank you, but, it doesn't really get beyond that.
You don't own it.
No, I don't want it. No.
Yeah, that's always hard. But that is that's a trauma response, when you're a kid and you don't feel you're good enough, it's very hard when you're an adult to accept those compliments because you second guess them, you're like, wait a minute, if the person that is supposed to love me unconditionally and give me all these compliments didn't give them to me, why this stranger would?
Yeah.
Doesn't even
And
know me.
right. And it's subconscious. I mean, it's not something that we can control. Um, but and it does shock me. I was at this retreat center just a couple of days ago, and men and women came up and they said, "Oh my goodness, Lori, you're so inspiring. It's so great to meet you." And I'm like, "Whoa, all right then." It's still hard for me. I still struggle with
Put
that.
it in writing so I can read it later and really,
Yeah,
because right
yeah,
now I don't know what to tell you.
yeah, yeah. But so one of the things that's really fun for me is that when I went back into my book and I added these snippets about other women,
Mm,
I thought, wow, now I really like writing that. I love writing about other women and what lessons they learned and how we can relate and so forth. And so that's why I started a newsletter, Sticky Thoughts.
mm.
And that's about extraordinary, ordinary women. And that gets me very excited because, my God, there's some amazing people that are walking in our neighborhood. I mean, it's just amazing what the wonder that is available to us if we just ask and
Yeah,
listen.
everybody is a world, and we don't know until we get curious and ask.
Right.
And it's very fascinating. That's what I love coaching, and that's what I love my podcast because I get to know people from everywhere. And sometimes I will just interview a mom that is not famous and nobody knows her, didn't write any books. She's just a mom, but she's so wise. So that's
Right,
also something that I love about your book, that you said that every woman is a wise woman. And it's
right.
true. I do believe that we all have gifts. We just unwrap them at different times. And there is so many women out there that have gifts that haven't unwrapped yet. And when you start
Exactly.
talking to them, you're like, wow. And they sometimes have that aha moment, like, huh, I didn't think about
Yeah.
that. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
great.
it is. It's absolutely wonderful. And that's why then I started a Facebook group too, the Wise Woman Sisterhood, because I wanted a place where women can connect. So I
Mm-hmm.
think one of the real issues nowadays is that people people aren't able to connect as much, and it's so important to connect. It's so important to have a place where you don't feel fear, or you feel really safe, and that you are free to be happy and you can experience deep peace. And it's I want to have a safe space for us to be able to connect and share and celebrate.
Yeah, I think that sometimes what happens is that we are afraid to be judged. So we don't share, we don't use our voices because we are afraid that we are going to be judged. And
Right,
for us, judging is rejection, right? If I'm being
right,
judged, I'm not going to be accepted. I'm not going to have that feeling of belonging. So I'm not going to use my voice. I'm not going to make any splashes. I'm just going to be quiet so then I can belong. And that's another reason why my podcast is Don't Shrink to Fit, because I think that when we do that, we are shrinking to become whatever the world, our parents, our partner, our group of friends wants us to be, because we are all looking for that, right? That, I mean, that's one of human needs, is to feel that we belong, and we shrink. And it's sad.
right,
Sometimes I see women that have so much light and they dim it because they are afraid to be judged.
right, exactly. And I think the thing that I so much want to do, and that will thrill me, is if I can help someone else find inner peace. Um, you take what's going on in the world today, and there's a lot of scary stuff and a lot of stuff that doesn't feel good at all.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a couple ways we can respond. We can get all wrapped up in turmoil and just go into a downward spiral and think, oh my God, it's the end of the world. What am I going to do? Or we can kind of put on blinders and pretend it's not happening. Or we can feel sad and we can work to spread joy and happiness where we can, to control the variables that we have. You know, Barack Obama said when he was leaving office, he says, it's not the end of the world until it's the end of the world. Just make sure you don't make it worse.
Right.
And I would say, let's make sure we do our part to make our life and those we can influence better. And we can do that by holding out our hands, holding each other's hands, by being in the moment, embracing the moment, and taking the time to see delight. I mean, there is so much delight for us to experience. There's a lot of good things happening. Nature is just the most phenomenal refuge in the world. I think nature is, I want to say
And
the
it's
pet.
free.
Yeah, it's
And it's
free.
free. You can just go outside and feel the breeze, in your hair and the sun in your face and have that joyful moment. Doesn't cost $1. And then go
No,
and spread that same joy to the people around you.
Right. I know when I was living in Ethiopia, I spent time in Addis Ababa, the capital, and then also time down in the field. And when I was in the capital, it's a very, very noisy place. And
Mhm.
there's millions of people jammed together in a very difficult setting. And I would go to sleep at night holding a crystal in one hand and a rock in the other hand. And they brought me peace and joy. They did. As weird as that sounds, but just holding that rock grounded me and kind of helped me have a little cocoon of safety around me and harmony. I could harmonize with my environment. And so even for our listeners who are living in the middle of the city and living in the middle of chaos, you know, find a find a rock, find a little rock, and just put it by your bed and hold it, stroke it. It'll calm you down. It really does make a difference.
That's a good tip. I'm gonna try to do that. You
Yeah,
have
it works.
you have achieved a lot of things in your life that have brought you joy and a sense of accomplishment. And you're a mom, so you have experienced that too. And now you have grandkids. What about love?
Well, after two failed marriages, I
Mhm.
said, that's it. I am so happy to be single on my own, unfettered and free. It's great. And then I'd find myself sitting in a restaurant looking at a couple over on the side, and they'd be talking to each other, and they seemed to enjoy talking to each other. And I was, what's going on with that? And then I'd look at somebody else, and they seemed to be having a good time. And I was kind of sitting there by myself thinking, And then I met a woman that told me that she had prayed for a year to be open if a good man came into her life that she'd be willing to recognize him as that. And I thought, oh my God, that sounds really bad. And I went home and I thought, but I was curious. I thought, I wonder if I could do that. And I would tentatively kind of think to myself, okay, if somebody comes around, I'll think about maybe. I thought, oh no, that's not going to work.
Too
And
much work.
after, yeah, and my stomach just went, blah, 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 it was not happening. And my daughter said, well, Mom, why don't you try online dating? And I thought, well, that's an idea because I'd own the delete key. I could delete.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was living over in Ethiopia, and so my profile picture was me in my field clothes, and my pictures were either holding Black babies from our orphanage or having very indigenous women kissing me on the cheek, and they've got a red ochre mud in their hair, and very, very Black, um, and I wasn't getting any matches. And if I got a match, I mean, it was going nowhere. So I kind of changed my profile picture a little bit, but I was all ready to just give it up after a couple months because it just didn't feel right. And I was home on leave for a couple of weeks, and my granddaughter was over, and by now she was, I don't know, she probably would have been 16 or 17, and my daughter said, well, why don't you go find Ella, grandpa? And by now I was ready to be off of the online dating,
Mm.
but we said okay. So Ella and I were flipping through, and all of a sudden here was a guy that had sent me a message, and I thought, oh, this is a little odd. Well, it turns out he was a very successful campaign manager, and he had become really intrigued by my pictures. And he decided, just looking at those pictures, that I was going to be for him, that I was the one. And he's used to winning. So he won.
He was a campaign manager, so he knew the
He was a
strategy.
campaign manager. He knew how to do it. And so we met 8 years ago, and we've been together ever since. Though the
I
first
love that.
night, the first night that I met him, I said, "Now, don't expect me to marry you. I mean, just get that out of your mind right now. And
Mm-hmm.
he said back to me, he said, well, why don't we just be unfettered and free together? I thought, well, that's a good line. You know, I'll work with
Right.
that for a little while. And he means it. He's absolutely has meant it, and it's great.
I love that for you. That's beautiful
Yeah.
because I think that was probably, and I might be wrong, but I think that probably was the missing piece of
Yes.
everything that you have done in your life. Because we
Yes.
also want to share those joyful moments with somebody we love. So
We
why
do.
not?
And we right. And we want to feel love
Mm-hmm.
and um and to have that safe place. And I have that with Bill. It is wonderful. It really is wonderful. And I'm so thankful that I didn't miss it. I was 67 when I met him. He was 75.
There you go.
Here
there's
we are.
still,
There's still
options
time.
out there and there is hope.
Right. 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 Yeah.
Oh
So
wow.
but you have to be willing to say yes.
You have to be open to receive.
Yes.
I think that's the
Yes.
key for everything in life. You can want a lot of things, but if you're not open to receive it, they're gonna pass you.
Exactly. They
Yeah.
are. And and you need to be willing to take a risk. And I know I'm often asked, well, what if it's too scary to take a risk? And my response is, then take just a real little one. Take a tiny little risk and have a little bit of a backup plan in case it doesn't work. But
Mm-hmm.
when you take that first little risk, you're starting to build a muscle. And then you get stronger and you're able to take that next little risk and the next one and the next one. Don't start with a big one.
Right.
Start with little ones.
Yeah. What would you tell your 6-year-old if you can go back in time?
I would tell her, no matter what, try to learn how to actively listen. Try
Mm,
to force yourself to develop the skill of listening closely so that you're not, and I'm not saying listen word for word. I'm really saying it's important to listen approximately, to listen to the meaning, to what's behind the words. And that's, if I had a do over, that would be my do over. Because then I would have been more emotionally available for my kids, because I would have learned to listen really carefully to what they were trying to tell me, even when they couldn't find the words to tell me.
yeah.
And I would love to have been able to give them that gift back when they were young.
Oh, wow. I love that. My dad used to say to me, you have to learn to read in between lines. Not
Yeah,
everybody can use their words. And
right.
I always think about that, like, what is this person trying to communicate? And it's so important, to not just listen to what they're saying, but trying to really understand. And I think it's an energy thing too. We connect in
Mm-hmm.
so many different ways with people that it's not just what they're telling us, it's also the energy that involves what they're saying to us. And we should be
Mm-hmm.
able to not only listen and read in between lines, but to receive it as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I know even when I was living in Africa and I was using up all my energy, and I was connected to a marvelous indigenous community in Brazil, and they would actually transmit energy to me. And I learned to that yes, I needed to be open, I needed to ask for help, but then I needed to be able to receive that help and then act on it. So it's not just a one-step process.
Mm.
It's a matter of asking, being open, receiving, and acting. And that really has made a difference as well.
Wow. I have a last question for you because we probably
Okay.
can talk another hour. Um,
Okay.
I want to know, I probably already have the answer, but what is your idea of legacy for yourself? What would you like people to remember you for?
I think I would really like people to remember me as being kind. I'd like to be kind. And one of the things I'm striving for, I want to be the endless source of peace, love, and harmony. And I would love to be known for that. I don't know that that's possible, but that's what I'm striving to be.
And that's a beautiful, beautiful thing to say. And I think we all should thrive for that. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. Is anything else you would like to add?
Um, yeah, I think what I would like to add to your listeners is know that you're not alone. Know that if you need a hand, just reach out your hand and I'll be there.
Thank you. Thank you all for listening to the Don't Shrink to Fit podcast. If you like this episode, please write a juicy comment below and subscribe to my podcast. Remember, we can only fly if we embrace each other. Until next week, be happy, be safe, and be kind to yourself.